My name's Anita Burke, 27, just another day grinding as an accountant when my life flipped upside down. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon at an Austin cafe buzzing with startup vibes when my brother stood up to speak. The whole family, mom, dad, grandma, my aunt, uncle, cousin, all of us leaned in as he raised his glass, grinning like he'd cracked the code to success. "I'm the hardest worker and most admirable in this family," he declared, chest-puffed-out voice dripping with pride. The table erupted in claps. Mom beamed. Dad nodded like he'd raised a king. I felt my stomach twist. He was basking in their praise, but I knew something they didn't. I leaned forward, locked eyes with him, and smiled. "Well then," I said, my voice calm but sharp, "you won't need my financial support or those college tuition payments anymore, right?" He choked, literally, choked on his drink, eyes wide like I'd slapped him. The table went dead silent. Mom's smile froze. Dad's fork clattered. Grandma raised an eyebrow. Nobody knew what I meant, not yet, but the air shifted heavy with questions. What was I hiding? Why was he panicking? I sat back, heart pounding, letting the moment hang. The truth was coming, and it would shake this family to its core. If this family drama's got you hooked, smash that subscribe button and dive into the chaos with us. A week before that cafe chaos, I was crunching numbers at my desk when Mom's text popped up. "Big news. Your brother's throwing a party to celebrate his startup. Saturday, 6 p.m. Don't be late." My eyes rolled so hard I nearly sprained them. Another party for him. Typical. My brother's always been the golden child, strutting around like he's destined for greatness. Meanwhile, I'm the one grinding, but do Mom and Dad notice? Nope. They're too busy fawning over his big dreams. Last year, he launched an app, some food delivery knockoff, that tanked spectacularly, losing $5,000 of investor money. He didn't even flinch, just shrugged it off like it was pocket change. Mom called it a learning experience. Dad slapped his back, saying, "That's my boy taking risks." I bit my tongue, knowing they'd never praise me like that. I'm just the boring one, right? Too focused on work, as Dad loves to jab. He called me last week mid-deadline to lecture me. "You're too focused on work," he said, voice dripping with judgment. "Loosen up, support your brother." Support him? I almost laughed. If only he knew. Grandma's the only one who gets it. She texted me after Dad's call. "Don't let them dim your shine, dear." Her words hit like a warm hug, pulling me back from the edge. She's always seen me even when Mom and Dad don't. But my brother. He's another story. He's been riding high on their praise forever, acting like he's built everything from scratch. His smug grin at family dinners, his endless pitches about the next big thing, it's exhausting. I've watched him charm everyone, spinning tales of success that never pan out. That failed app. He claimed it was ahead of its time. Sure. And yet, Mom eats it up, always ready to believe his next scheme will be different. She's not naive, just hopeful, too hopeful. Dad's worse. He sees my brother as his legacy, the son who'll make the family name shine. Me, I'm just the backup, the one who's too serious. I stared at Mom's text, my gut twisting. Another celebration for his so-called achievements. I'd seen his latest pitch deck, sloppy, full of buzzwords, no real plan. He'd been dodging my questions about it for weeks, brushing me off with that cocky laugh. "Don't worry, sis, I've got this," he'd say, like I'm some nosy bystander. But I wasn't buying it. Something felt off, like he was hiding a train wreck behind that swagger. I tapped out a quick reply to Mom, "I'll be there." Not because I wanted to cheer him on, but because I needed answers. My phone buzzed again, my friend Rhonda. "You okay with this party nonsense?" she asked. I sighed, spilling my frustration. Rhonda's always been my rock, the one who calls out my brother's nonsense without hesitation. "He's all talk," she said. "Bet he's hyping nothing again." She wasn't wrong. His last big win was a flop, and I had a sinking feeling this new app was heading the same way. But Mom and Dad. They were already planning the guest list, probably bragging to their friends about their star son. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Grandma's text glowed on my screen, her words a lifeline. Dad's voice echoed in my head, his jab about me being too focused stinging more than I'd admit. I thought about all the times I'd stayed quiet, letting my brother steal the spotlight while Mom and Dad clapped like he'd invented the internet. Not this time. That party was coming and I was done swallowing my words. Whatever he was hiding, I'd figure it out. And when I did, they'd all see him for who he really was. My aunt and cousin had been at his last pitch too. My aunt had raised an eyebrow when he dodged her questions about revenue. My cousin just laughed, whispering to me later, "He's dreaming if he thinks that app's going anywhere." They saw through him, at least a little. But Mom and Dad blind as ever. I closed my laptop, my mind racing. That cafe party wasn't just another family gathering. It was a reckoning, and I was ready to face it. Back at the cafe, my brother was grinning like he'd already banked $1 million. He stood tall, glass raised, launching into his pitch about his new food delivery app. "It's revolutionary," he boasted, voice booming. "Seamless ordering, local restaurants. Big investors lined up." Mom clapped first, eyes sparkling with pride. Dad nodded, muttering, "That's my boy." My aunt and cousin joined in their applause, echoing through the cafe. Grandma sat quietly, her gaze sharp, watching him like a hawk. I gripped my fork, feeling the weight of every lie he spun. His words were slick, but I knew the truth behind that polished act. I stood up, heart racing, and cleared my throat. The table fell silent, all eyes on me. So I said, my voice steady but cutting, "If you're this successful, I guess I can stop paying your way." My brother's grin faltered, his glass trembling. "What are you talking about, sis?" he snapped, but his eyes darted nervously. I didn't flinch. $10,000 for your college tuition every semester, I said. $15,000 for that app you're hyping. That's 25 grand from me, to keep you afloat. The cafe seemed to freeze. Mom's jaw dropped. Dad's face darkened. My aunt gasped, and my cousin's fork clattered against her plate. "You paid for that?" my aunt demanded, turning to my brother. All this time, my cousin leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "So this app? It's not even yours," she pressed, voice sharp with disbelief. He stammered, face flushing. "It's my idea," he insisted. "I've got investors. It's about to take off." But his voice cracked, betraying him. Grandma leaned in, her tone soft but piercing. "Then why's your sister footing the bill, dear?" she asked, her words landing like a quiet bomb. I felt a rush of warmth. Grandma always had my back, even when the room turned against me. Dad's chair scraped as he leaned forward, glaring at me. "You're stirring trouble?" he snapped, his voice low and accusing. "Why bring this up now? Can't you just support him?" Support him. The words burned. I'd been supporting him for years, draining my savings while he paraded like a star. "I'm done carrying him," I shot back, my voice rising. Mom reached for my hand, her face torn. "Honey, why didn't you tell us?" she whispered. But I saw the doubt in her eyes, still clinging to his golden image. My aunt wasn't letting it go. "You've been taking her money and calling it your success," she asked my brother, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. He squirmed, loosening his collar. "It's not like that," he muttered. "I'm close to a deal, just needed a little time." My cousin scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Time for what?" "Another flop," she said, crossing her arms. The table was a battlefield now, every word a strike. I sat back, watching him unravel, his charm crumbling under their questions. Grandma touched my arm, her voice low. "You're stronger than this nonsense," she said, her eyes warm but fierce. That moment, her words were my anchor. Dad kept glaring. Mom looked lost, but my aunt and cousin pressed harder, their voices rising. My brother tried one last defense, claiming, "The investors are real, I swear," but no one was buying it anymore. He grabbed his jacket, face red, and stormed out, leaving his untouched plate behind. The cafe door slammed, and the silence that followed was heavier than ever. That evening, I ducked into a taco joint downtown to vent to Rhonda. My hands were still shaking from the cafe showdown, my chest tight with years of bottled-up frustration. Rhonda slid into the booth across from me, her eyes narrowing as I spilled everything. "He's been leeching off you, sis," she said, her voice sharp with disgust. "And your parents just clap for him, unreal." I nodded, stirring my drink, the ice clinking against the glass. She was right. I'd been propping up my brother's dreams, but for what? So he could bask in the spotlight while I stayed in the shadows. "I'm done," I said, my voice firm for the first time in years. "No more bailing him out." Rhonda leaned forward, her grin fierce. "About time," she said, raising her glass. "You've been carrying him way too long." Her words hit hard, like permission I didn't know I needed. I'd spent years justifying it. Helping my brother was just what family did, right? But family shouldn't mean bleeding myself dry. I stared at my phone, half expecting a text from him, some half-baked apology. Nothing. Just silence, like he thought he could wait me out. My phone buzzed, but it wasn't him. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Honey?" she said, her voice soft but urgent. "Can't you give him another chance? He's trying so hard." Trying. I almost laughed. She hadn't seen his lies unravel at the cafe, hadn't felt the sting of Dad's glares. "Mom," I said, keeping my tone even, "he's had enough chances." She sighed, her voice cracking. "But he's your brother," she pressed, as if that erased everything. I clenched my jaw, the old guilt creeping in. She still saw him as the golden boy even now. Before I could respond, a text from Grandma popped up. "You don't owe him, dear. Stand your ground." I exhaled, her words cutting through the fog. Grandma always knew when I needed her, like she could sense my resolve wavering. I showed Rhonda the text, and she nodded, her eyes fierce. "She's right," Rhonda said. "He's not your responsibility." I leaned back, the weight of Mom's call still heavy. Why was it always on me to fix him? Why couldn't she see what he'd done? Then Dad called. I braced myself, knowing what was coming. "You're being too hard on him," he said, his tone sharp, like I'd betrayed the family. "He's young. He's learning. Why can't you support him?" Support him. There it was again, that same tired line. "Dad," I said, my voice low but steady, "I've supported him enough. It's time he stands on his own." He huffed, muttering something about me being selfish, then hung up. I stared at the phone, my heart pounding. His words stung, but I wasn't backing down. Rhonda reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You're doing the right thing," she said, her voice steady. "Let him figure it out." I nodded, but the doubt lingered. Mom's pleading, Dad's anger, it was a lot. I'd always been the one to keep the peace, to sacrifice for the family. But tonight something shifted. I wasn't just angry. I was tired. Tired of being the invisible one, tired of carrying his failures. Grandma's text glowed on my screen again, a reminder I wasn't alone. I thought about Mom still clinging to her image of him, and Dad blind to his faults. They'd always put him first, but I couldn't anymore. Rhonda ordered another round, her laugh pulling me back. "To your freedom," she toasted, and I raised my glass, a small smile breaking through. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. But I knew this wasn't over. Mom and Dad wouldn't let it go, and my brother, he'd come back spinning another story. I wasn't sure what he'd try next. But I was sure of one thing: I wasn't paying for it anymore. 3 weeks later, Mom called me with a voice that carried bad news. "Honey," she said, her tone heavy, "your brother's in trouble." I sat at my kitchen table, gripping my coffee mug, already bracing for what came next. She explained how he'd lost his college scholarship, tens of thousands of dollars gone because he didn't submit financial reports on time. Worse, he was drowning in debt, 20 grand deep from his startup loans. I wasn't shocked, just numb. I'd seen this coming, but hearing it still hit like a punch. "He's working himself to the bone," Mom said, her voice pleading. "Serving tables, delivering food, barely sleeping. Can't you help him out? Help him?" Again. The words twisted in my gut. I'd already given him so much, only to watch him crash and burn. "No, Mom," I said, my voice steady but cold. "He made his choices. She went quiet, then sighed like she was carrying his failures too. He's your brother, she whispered. But I cut her off. And I'm done being his bank. The line went silent and she hung up without another word. I called Rhonda right after needing her clarity. Sis, you're not his lifeline, she said, her voice firm over the phone. He dug this hole. Let him climb out. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. She was right. He'd taken my money, my time, my trust, and thrown it away on a pipe dream. Now he was scrambling, juggling shifts at a diner and late-night delivery runs, his life unraveling. Part of me felt a pang of pity. He was my brother after all, but it faded fast. I wasn't going to let guilt pull me back in. Later that day, Grandma called. Her voice was warm, steady, like always. You're doing the right thing, dear, she said, and I could hear the smile in her words. You've carried enough. I exhaled her words, washing away the doubt Mom's call had stirred. Grandma had a way of cutting through the noise, reminding me I wasn't wrong to protect myself. I pictured my brother bleary-eyed, hauling trays or biking through Austin's streets, his swagger gone. He wasn't the golden boy anymore, just a kid in over his head. Rhonda texted me later, checking in. Heard he's falling apart, she wrote. You holding strong, I typed back. Yeah, no going back. She sent a fist bump emoji and I smiled. Rhonda always knew how to keep me grounded. But Mom's words lingered, her plea echoing in my head. She still believed he could turn it around, that he was one good idea away from redemption. I wasn't so sure. His scholarship was gone, his startup was a bust, and those loans weren't going away. He'd built his life on promises he couldn't keep, and now it was collapsing. I thought about Dad too. He hadn't called since the cafe, probably still fuming that I'd turned on my brother. His silence spoke louder than words. He'd always seen me as the problem, the one who didn't believe enough. But I wasn't the one failing now. My brother's life was a mess. Late shifts, missed payments, exhaustion written all over him. I'd heard from a friend he looked like a ghost, bags under his eyes, barely holding it together. It wasn't my job to fix him, not anymore. Sitting there, sipping my coffee, I felt a strange calm. For years, I'd been the one to clean up his messes, to keep the family together. But now, I was choosing myself. Rhonda's support, Grandma's call, they reminded me I wasn't alone in this. My brother's fall was his own, and I wasn't going to catch him this time. He'd have to face the consequences, and I'd have to face whatever came next. A month later, my brother showed up at my apartment looking worn out. His eyes were sunken, his shoulders slumped, a far cry from the cocky kid who'd boasted at the cafe. He held out an envelope, his hands shaky. Here, he said, voice low. $1,000. I'm turning things around, sis. I took the envelope, my fingers brushing the crumpled bills inside, but my stomach churned. $1,000. It was a drop in the bucket compared to what he owed, and his vague tone set off alarms. Where'd this come from? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. Been working hard, he mumbled. Serving tables, delivering food, even pulling shifts at a warehouse. I raised an eyebrow. 3 jobs sounded intense, but something about his story felt off, like he was selling me another pitch. He pulled out his phone, showing me a text he'd sent to Mom, paying Anita back, proving I'm serious. The message was all bravado, no details. Typical. I'd seen this act before. Big promises, shaky follow-through. I called Rhonda that night, needing her take. Sis, don't fall for it, she said, her voice sharp over the line. He's playing you. Keep your distance. She was right. His sudden change felt like a show, a way to claw back into my good graces. I thought about his jobs, grueling low-pay gigs that barely dented his debt. Was he really trying, or just scrambling to save face? I wasn't buying his redemption story, not yet. My phone buzzed with a text from Grandma. Stay strong, dear. Her words were a lifeline, as always, pulling me back from the edge of doubt. I showed Rhonda the text and she nodded. Listen to her, she said. He's got to prove himself without your money. I agreed, but part of me wondered if he could. He'd always leaned on charm to get by, but charm wouldn't pay off 20 grand. I pictured him hauling boxes in a warehouse, sweat-soaked and exhausted, or dodging traffic on his delivery bike. It was a grind, no question, but was it real change? He'd texted me again later, a selfie from the diner apron on, grinning like he'd cracked some code. "See, I'm legit now," the message read. But the grin felt forced, the words too eager. I didn't reply. His effort was something sure, but $1,000 and a photo didn't erase years of taking me for granted. I thought about Mom and Dad probably cheering his comeback without asking questions. Dad hadn't spoken to me since the cafe, his silence a wall between us. Mom had gone quiet too, likely torn between her golden boy and me. Rhonda came over the next day, her eyes scanning the envelope on my counter. "That's it?" she asked, scoffing. "He thinks this fixes everything." I shook my head, the weight of his debt still heavy in my mind. "He's trying to look good," I said. "But he's hiding something." Rhonda crossed her arms, her voice firm. "Don't let him pull you back in. You're free now." Free. The word hit hard. I'd spent so long tied to his messes, but I was done being his safety net. Grandma's text stayed with me, her words a quiet anchor. I pictured my brother juggling shifts, maybe believing his own hype. But his vague answers, his quick grin, they didn't add up. He was performing, not changing. I wasn't going to let a few bills and a text fool me. Rhonda was right. Distance was my best move. Whatever he was planning, I'd wait and see. He'd have to do more than show up with $1,000 to convince me he was different. 2 months later, we gathered at Mom and Dad's for what should have been a simple dinner. The dining room was tense, forks clinking against plates as my brother took center stage again. He stood up, chest puffed out, holding a check like a trophy. "I've paid back $5,000, he announced, his voice brimming with pride. Mom's eyes lit up and Dad clapped him on the shoulder, beaming. "That's my boy," Dad said, as if nothing had ever gone wrong. My aunt and cousin exchanged glances, their smiles thin. I sat there, my stomach twisting, something about his smug tone ringing hollow. I'd heard whispers from a mutual friend that he'd been borrowing money, but he hadn't mentioned it. "Where'd you get $5,000? I asked, my voice calm but pointed. His smile faltered just for a second before he waved it off. "Hard work, sis," he said, too smooth. "I'm making things right." But his eyes darted to the side, a tell I'd seen too many times. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a text from my uncle who'd let slip something troubling. "Did you borrow that from Uncle Percy?" I asked, locking eyes with him. The room went still. Mom's fork froze midair, Dad's grin vanished, and my aunt leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "Borrowed?" she asked, her voice sharp. "You said you earned it?" My cousin crossed her arms, her tone biting. "So you're passing off a loan as your own money?" she pressed. My brother's face reddened, his hands fidgeting with the check. "It's not like that," he stammered. "I'm good for it, I swear." But the confidence was gone, his voice shaky. Grandma, sitting quietly at the table's end, spoke up. "You're stronger than this, dear," she said to me, her eyes steady and warm. Her words fueled me, cutting through the tension like a blade. I stood up, holding up my phone with the text from my uncle. "He borrowed $5,000 from Uncle Percy last week," I said, my voice steady. "No jobs, no savings, just another loan he's calling a win." Mom gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Dad's face darkened, but he didn't speak. My aunt's jaw tightened and my cousin shook her head, muttering, "Unbelievable." "You're lying," my brother snapped, his voice rising. "Why are you always against me?" But my aunt cut him off. "Is it true?" she demanded, staring him down. He hesitated, then slumped back in his chair, the check crumpling in his hand. "It's just temporary," he mumbled. "I'll pay Percy back." My cousin scoffed. "With what, another loan?" she said, her words dripping with sarcasm. The table was a storm now, everyone's eyes on him, his lies laid bare. Dad finally spoke, his voice low and angry. "Why can't you just let him fix this?" he said to me, his glare cutting deep. "You're tearing us apart. Tearing us apart." The words stung, but I held my ground. He's the one lying, Dad. I said, my voice firm. I'm just telling the truth. Mom reached for my hand, her eyes pleading. Honey, maybe he's trying, she whispered, but even she sounded unsure now. Grandma touched my shoulder, her voice soft. You did the right thing, dear, she said, her strength anchoring me. My brother grabbed his jacket, his face a mix of shame and defiance. I don't need this, he muttered, shoving the check into his pocket. He stormed out the front door, slamming behind him, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. My aunt shook her head, muttering about trust. My cousin stared at her plate, clearly done with his excuses. Mom looked lost, torn between her son and the truth. Dad just sat there, his silence louder than any words. I felt Grandma's hand on mine. A quiet reminder I wasn't alone. This wasn't over, but I'd done what I had to. A month after that dinner, I made a choice that felt like lifting a weight off my shoulders. I blocked my brother's number, his messages, his emails, every way he could reach me. He hadn't apologized not once for the lies or the money he'd taken. No texts, no calls, just more silence, as if he expected me to come running back. I was done waiting for him to own up. Cutting him off wasn't easy, but it was necessary, like closing a door I'd held open too long. I called Mom the next day, my heart heavy, but resolute. I'm not talking to him anymore, I said, my voice steady. She was quiet for a long moment, then sighed. I understand, honey, she said, her tone soft, almost broken. He's made his choices and you've made yours. For the first time, she didn't push me to fix things, didn't defend him. It was like she finally saw the cost of his actions, not just on me, but on her too. Her acceptance felt like a crack in the wall she'd built around him. Dad, on the other hand, said nothing. I hadn't heard from him since the dinner, his silence a stubborn wall. He'd always put my brother first, and I knew he blamed me for this rift. But his refusal to speak didn't shake me anymore. I'd spent years trying to please him, to be the good daughter, but I was tired of chasing his approval. If he couldn't see the truth, that was his burden, not mine. A few days later, a letter arrived from Grandma, her handwriting neat and familiar. I opened it, my eyes tracing her words. You've always been enough, dear. The sentence hit me hard, a quiet truth I hadn't let myself believe. She wrote about strength, about choosing myself, about how family didn't mean sacrificing everything. I held the letter close, her words wrapping around me like a hug. Grandma had always seen me, even when I felt invisible. Her letter was a reminder that I wasn't alone, that I'd done the right thing. I threw myself into work after that, diving into projects with a focus I hadn't felt in years. My job at a marketing firm in Austin was demanding, but it was mine, something I'd built without carrying anyone else. Late nights at the office, brainstorming campaigns, meeting deadlines, it was exhausting, but freeing. For the first time, my energy wasn't split between my brother's messes and my own life. I was building something for myself, and it felt good. I thought about Mom sometimes, her quiet acceptance lingering in my mind. She'd stopped calling as often, maybe giving me space, maybe grappling with her own guilt. Dad's silence grew louder, but it didn't pull me back. My brother's absence was the strangest part. No texts, no sudden visits, no new schemes. I wondered what he was doing, if he was still juggling jobs or borrowing from someone else. But I didn't check. I didn't need to know. His life was his now, and mine was mine. Grandma's letter stayed on my nightstand, a touchstone for hard days. I'd read it when doubt crept in, when I questioned if I'd been too harsh. You've always been enough, she'd written, and I was starting to believe it. Setting boundaries wasn't betrayal, it was survival. I'd given too much for too long, and now I was reclaiming what was mine. Freedom wasn't just cutting him off, it was choosing to live without the weight of his failures. I was finally learning what it meant to be enough for myself. If you have ever been told that setting boundaries makes you selfish, I hope you hear this clearly. You are not wrong for wanting to protect yourself. You have the right to be respected. You have the right to say no. And you have the right to want more for your own life without feeling guilty for it. For a long time, you may have believed that loving your family meant being the one who always understood, always gave another chance, and always stepped in when someone else refused to take responsibility. Maybe you became the person everyone called when there was a problem. Maybe you quietly paid the bills, offered another opportunity, or sacrificed your own plans because you were afraid of what would happen if you stopped. But love should never require you to disappear from your own life. Taking care of yourself does not mean that you care less about other people. In fact, learning to treat yourself with respect is the foundation of healthier relationships. When you understand your limits, you can give from a place of choice instead of guilt. You can support someone without becoming responsible for every decision they make. And sometimes, healing requires distance. It may mean saying, "I cannot do this anymore." It may mean refusing to explain yourself for the 100th time. It may mean stepping away from a relationship that continues to demand sacrifice without accountability. That decision can hurt. It can feel lonely. You may even wonder whether you were too harsh. If you have ever faced a similar moment in your own family, I invite you to share your story in the comments. You never know who may read your words and realize they are not alone. If this story gave you something to reflect on, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can also find more stories about family self-respect, boundaries, healing, and personal growth in the description. Thank you sincerely for staying with this story until the end. Wherever you are in your journey, remember that you are allowed to choose a life that does not require you to carry everyone else. Protecting your peace is not selfish. It is sometimes the necessary first step toward becoming whole again.